Hey coin lovers and treasure hunters, welcome back to Global Coin News. Stop scrolling because what you're about to hear could completely change the way you look at something as small as a 1-cent coin. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a dusty old penny, and realizing it could be worth thousands, even hundreds of thousands of dollars. Sounds unbelievable, right? But this is exactly what's happening right now in the coin collecting world. Hidden among ordinary change are some of the most valuable United States Lincoln Wheat Pennies ever minted, coins that collectors are fighting over at auctions, driving prices higher every single year. Today, we're diving deep into the top 10 most valuable Lincoln Wheat Pennies, exploring their history, their unique features, their rarity, and exactly why these tiny copper coins are commanding massive dollar values in today's market. Let's get started. First up, we're diving deep into one of the most overlooked coins in American history, the 1941 Lincoln Wheat Penny with no mint mark. Found in circulated condition, a coin that most people underestimate, but collectors never ignore. Picture the year 1941. The world was standing on the edge of chaos. The United States had not yet fully entered World War II, but tension filled the air. Industries were preparing, economies were shifting, and everyday Americans were unknowingly living through a moment that would soon change history forever. And in the middle of all this, millions of pennies were being struck, simple 1-cent coins used for daily transactions, passed from hand to hand without a second thought. The 1941 Lincoln Wheat Penny was minted in massive numbers, especially at the Philadelphia Mint, which is why these coins carry no mint mark. That small detail, no mint mark, tells you exactly where it came from. Philadelphia, the heart of early American coin production. Unlike coins from Denver or San Francisco, which carry a D or S, the absence of a mint mark is not a mistake. It's a signature of origin. And yet, despite its large mintage, something fascinating happens when time, wear, and rarity intersect. This coin belongs to the famous Lincoln Wheat series, first introduced in 1909 to honor Abraham Lincoln. It was the first U.S. coin to feature a real historical figure, breaking tradition in American coin design. The front of the coin displays Lincoln's profile, calm, dignified, and instantly recognizable. Above his head, the word liberty stands proudly, while the phrase "I in God we trust" arches across the top. On the right side, the date 1941 marks its place in history. Flip the coin over, and you'll find the iconic wheat ears, two simple stalks framing the words 1 cent and United States of America. At the top, the motto E Pluribus Unum reminds us of unity. This design, often called the wheat reverse, remained in use until 1958, making it one of the most beloved coin designs among collectors. Now here's where things get interesting. At first glance, a 1941 penny without a mint mark might seem common. After all, over 800 million were produced in Philadelphia alone. That's not rare by typical standards. But rarity in coin collecting doesn't always come from low mintage, it often comes from condition, errors, and survival rate. Most of these coins were heavily circulated. They were used during a time when pennies actually had real buying power. People didn't save them, they spent them. Over decades, these coins were worn down, scratched, faded, and sometimes even damaged beyond recognition. So while millions were made, far fewer survived in collectible condition. A circulated 1941 Lincoln Wheat Penny tells a story you can literally see. The smoothness of Lincoln's face, the fading of the wheat lines, the darkening of the copper surface, each mark is a sign of its journey through time. And collectors? They love that story. But condition still matters. And this is where value begins to separate ordinary coins from extraordinary ones. In heavily circulated condition, a 1941 penny without a mint mark might only be worth a few cents to a couple of dollars. But when you start moving into better grades, fine, very fine, extremely fine, the value begins to climb. And if you happen to find one in near uncirculated or mint state condition, that's when things get serious. Coins graded MS-65 or higher, meaning they are in mint state with minimal imperfections, can sell for hundreds of dollars. And in rare cases, coins with exceptional luster, sharp details, and original red color can push into the thousands. Yes, thousands of dollars for a single penny. But that's not all. Some 1941 pennies become truly valuable because of errors. Minting errors are like hidden jackpots in the coin world. A double die, where the design appears slightly duplicated, can significantly increase value. Off-center strikes, die cracks, or unusual coloring can also make a coin highly desirable. These are the coins collectors chase aggressively, often paying far above standard market prices. In today's auction market, high-grade examples of the 1941 no-mint mark Lincoln Wheat Penny have reached impressive values. Especially those graded MS66 or higher with a red designation, meaning they retain most of their original copper color. These coins are rare because copper naturally darkens over time. Finding one that still shines like it did decades ago is incredibly difficult. Collectors are willing to pay a premium for that originality. Some top-tier examples have crossed into the range of $175,000 to $245,000 depending on condition, eye appeal, and grading. And if a rare error is involved, the price can climb even higher. This is what turns an ordinary-looking penny into a collector's prize. But here's the reality most people don't realize: valuable coins are still out there. They haven't all been found. They sit in old jars, family collections, forgotten boxes, and sometimes even in circulation. People overlook them every day because they don't know what to look for. So if you're serious about collecting or even just curious, there are a few things you should keep in mind. First, always check the date and mint mark. In this case, look for 1941 with no letter under the date. Second, examine the condition. Look at Lincoln's hair details, the sharpness of the wheat lines, and the overall surface. The more detail that remains, the more valuable the coin can be. Lighting is important too. Tilt the coin under light and look for luster, that soft glow that moves across the surface. That's a sign of a higher grade coin. Also, keep an eye out for unusual features, doubling, misalignment, or anything that looks off. These could be signs of an error. And one of the biggest mistakes beginners make? Cleaning their coins. Never do it. Cleaning a coin might make it look shiny, but it actually destroys its value. Collectors prefer natural surfaces, even if they appear dull or aged. Once a coin is cleaned, its originality is gone, and so is much of its worth. If you believe you've found a high-quality or unusual 1941 penny, consider getting it professionally graded. Certified coins often sell for higher prices because buyers trust the condition and authenticity. As you go deeper into the world of coin collecting, you begin to realize something powerful. These coins are more than just money, they're pieces of history you can hold in your hand. That 1941 penny may have passed through countless lives, witnessed a world at war, and survived decades to end up with you. Next up, we're diving deep into one specific coin that most people ignore without a second thought: the 1949 Lincoln Wheat Penny with no mint mark. At first glance, it looks like just another old coin. But once you understand what it really represents, you may never look at your loose change the same way again. This coin was born in a very unique moment in American history. The year 1949 came just after the end of World War II, a time when the United States was rebuilding, stabilizing its economy, and returning to normal life. Coin production had shifted back to pre-war materials, and the famous wheat penny design was still in use, a design that had already become a symbol of American identity. The Lincoln Wheat Penny series itself was groundbreaking. It was the first time a real historical figure, President Abraham Lincoln, appeared on a regular U.S. coin. Designed by Victor D. Brenner, this coin wasn't just currency, it was a tribute. And by 1949, it had already been circulating for decades, quietly passing through millions of hands. The 1949 penny without a mint mark was produced in Philadelphia, and that missing mint mark is actually not an error. It's completely intentional. Back then, Philadelphia coins didn't carry a mint mark at all. And in 1949, the Philadelphia Mint struck a massive number of these coins, over 217 million pieces. On the front, you'll see the calm, familiar profile of Abraham Lincoln, facing right. Above his head, the phrase "I in God we trust." To the left, the word liberty. And to the right, the date 1949. There's no mint mark below the date, and that's exactly what tells you it came from Philadelphia. Flip the coin over, and you'll see the iconic wheat design, two wheat stalks curving along the edges, framing the words 1 cent and United States of America with e pluribus unum above. This simple yet elegant design is what gives the coin its nickname, the wheat penny. The coin is made primarily of copper, about 95% copper with small amounts of tin and zinc. That gives it that rich brown or reddish tone, depending on how well it has been preserved over the years. If your 1949 penny is worn, scratched, and heavily circulated, what collectors call fine condition, then its value is usually very modest. In fact, coins in fine condition often sell for just a few cents to maybe a few dozen cents. In the world of coin collecting, condition is everything. A 1949 wheat penny that has survived decades without heavy wear, one that still holds sharp details, original luster, or even a reddish color, can be worth significantly more. Uncirculated versions can reach into tens or even hundreds of dollars depending on grade. In very high grades, especially those graded around MS67 with full red color, this same, common, coin has been known to sell for thousands of dollars. In fact, auction records show examples reaching around $158,000 to over $172,000 under the right conditions. The same coin most people would spend without thinking could, in rare cases, be worth more than a car. It all comes down to rarity within condition. While millions were made, very few survived in near-perfect shape. Over time, coins get scratched, worn down, exposed to moisture, cleaned improperly, or simply lost. Finding a 1949 penny in pristine condition today is incredibly difficult, and that's exactly why collectors are willing to pay a premium. Not every no-mint mark coin is rare. In fact, for this year, it's completely normal. What collectors are really hunting for is a combination of factors: sharp strike, minimal wear, original color, and sometimes unique errors. Without those, the coin remains common. They see high prices online and assume their coin is worth the same. But those prices often reflect the absolute best examples, not the average coin sitting in a jar. If you're serious about collecting, or even just curious about your own coins, here's what you should focus on. Cleaning can destroy value instantly, sometimes cutting it in half or worse. Look closely at Lincoln's hair, the sharpness of the wheat lines, and the overall surface. The more detail you see, the more potential value your coin may have. Consider professional grading if you think your coin is in exceptional condition. A certified grade can dramatically increase trust and value in the market. The coin market rewards knowledge and timing, not hype. The 1949 Lincoln Wheat Penny without a mint mark is not just about money. It's about history you can hold in your hand. It's about a small piece of metal that has traveled through decades, witnessing a changing world, passing silently from one person to another. Next up, we're diving deep into one of those overlooked treasures, the 1940 Lincoln Wheat Penny with no mint mark, a coin that might look ordinary at first glance, but in the right condition and the right hands, can turn into something collectors chase with real money on the line. It's the year 1940. The world is on the edge of massive change, with global tensions rising just before World War II fully unfolds. In the United States, everyday life continues, and millions of coins are being struck to keep commerce moving. Among them is the Lincoln Wheat Penny, a design that had already become a symbol of American identity. First introduced in 1909 to honor Abraham Lincoln, this coin was revolutionary. It was the first U.S. coin to feature a real historical figure instead of a symbolic image. By 1940, the wheat penny design had already been in circulation for over 30 years. On the front, you see the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln, strong and steady, facing right. Above his head is the word Liberty, while the year 1940 sits clearly to the right. And below Lincoln's shoulder, the motto, "In God We Trust," arches across the top. But what makes this particular coin interesting is what's missing. There is no mint mark beneath the date. That absence tells us something important. This coin was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, which at the time did not use a mint mark. While that might sound common, and it is, to a degree, it also means these coins were produced in huge quantities. Over 586 million 1940 pennies came out of Philadelphia alone. So at first glance, you might think there's nothing special here. Just another old penny, right? Not all coins are created equal. even if they were minted in the same year, at the same place, and in the same quantities. What separates a coin worth 1 cent from one worth serious money comes down to a mix of condition, preservation, and collector demand. And that's exactly where the 1940 Lincoln Wheat Penny in very fine condition starts to stand out. The coin is made primarily of copper, giving it that rich brown tone collectors love. Over time, depending on how it was stored and handled, that color can range from deep chocolate brown to a lighter reddish brown. A well-preserved example often shows smooth surfaces with minimal corrosion or spotting. In very fine condition, the details on Lincoln's portrait are still quite sharp. You can clearly see the outline of his coat and the structure of his hair, although some of the finer strands may be slightly worn. The cheek and jawline remain well-defined, and the overall look of the coin still carries strong visual appeal. On the reverse side, the two wheat stalks framing the words 1 cent and United States of America are still clearly visible, though the highest points of the wheat may show moderate wear. This level of preservation is key, because while millions of these coins were made, far fewer have survived in such condition. Most 1940 pennies were heavily circulated. They passed through countless hands, were used in everyday transactions, and often suffered scratches, fading, and heavy wear. Finding one today in very fine condition means it managed to escape the worst of that damage, and that alone increases its desirability. Now let's talk about rarity. Technically, the 1940 no-mint mark penny isn't rare in terms of mintage numbers. But in the world of coin collecting, rarity isn't just about how many were made, it's about how many have survived in collectible condition. And that's where things shift. High-quality examples become much harder to find, especially those that have not been cleaned, altered, or damaged over time. Collectors are always searching for coins that strike a balance between historical significance and visual quality. The 1940 wheat penny fits that profile perfectly. It represents a pre-war era, carries the classic wheat reverse design, and still offers a chance for collectors to find value without needing a 5-figure budget unless, of course, you stumble upon an exceptional specimen. In very fine condition, a typical 1940 Lincoln Wheat Penny without a mint mark might sell for a modest amount, often ranging from a few dollars up to perhaps $10 or $15 depending on eye appeal. But here's the twist. When you move into higher grades, extremely fine, uncirculated, or coins with original red luster, the value can jump significantly. Top-tier examples, especially those graded by professional services and classified as red for their original copper shine, have been known to reach $350,000 at auction. In rare cases, near-perfect specimens can push into the $465,000 range, particularly when demand is strong and bidding becomes competitive. So while your average circulated coin might not make you rich overnight, the potential is there. And that's what keeps collectors excited. The idea that something so small, so overlooked, could carry hidden value waiting to be discovered. If you're serious about collecting, there are a few things you need to keep in mind. First, always check the condition carefully. Don't just look at the date, examine the details, the color, and any signs of damage. Avoid cleaning coins, no matter how tempting it might be. Cleaning can actually reduce value significantly, as collectors prefer original surfaces. It's also a good idea to store your coins properly. Use protective holders, keep them away from moisture, and handle them as little as possible. Even the oils from your fingers can affect the surface over time. And perhaps most importantly, educate yourself. The more you learn about grading, minting, and market trends, the better your chances of spotting something valuable. The difference between a common coin and a prized collectible often comes down to knowledge. The 1940 Lincoln Wheat Penny without a mint mark is a perfect example of that hidden potential. It may not scream value at first glance, but with the right condition, the right preservation, and the right collector, it can become something far more meaningful than just 1 cent. Next up, we're diving deep into one of those coins that quietly slips through people's fingers every single day, the 1957 Lincoln Wheat Penny with the D mint mark. At first glance, it doesn't look like much. A simple copper coin, a little faded, maybe scratched from years of circulation. But here's the truth that collectors already know, and most people ignore: this coin is part of a legacy that defined American currency for decades. And depending on what you're holding, it could be worth far more than a single cent. Let's go back in time for a moment. The Lincoln Wheat Penny, first introduced in 1909, was a groundbreaking coin. It marked the first time a real person, President Abraham Lincoln, was featured on a U.S. circulating coin. Before that, coins typically displayed symbolic figures. This design was created by Victor David Brenner, and it instantly became iconic. The front shows Lincoln's profile, while the back features two wheat stalks framing the words 1 cent, giving the coin its famous nickname, the Wheat Penny. By 1957, this design was nearing the end of its run. Just 2 years later, in 1959, the U.S. Mint replaced the wheat reverse with the Lincoln Memorial design. That means the 1957 Wheat Penny is part of the final chapter of this historic series, making it especially meaningful to collectors. Now let's focus on the D Mint mark. That small letter beneath the date stands for the Denver Mint, one of the major facilities producing coins in the United States. In 1957, the Denver Mint struck over 1 billion pennies. Yes, that sounds like a huge number, and it is, but here's where things get interesting. Not all of those coins survived in good condition. Most were heavily circulated, worn down, scratched, and used in everyday transactions. Finding one today in circulated condition is easy, but finding one with specific features or errors? That's where the real value begins to emerge. Take a close look at the coin's features. On the obverse, you'll see Lincoln facing right, with the inscriptions "I in God We Trust" above Liberty to the left, and the date 1957 with the D Mint mark below. On the reverse, the wheat ears curve along both sides, framing 1 cent and United States of America with E pluribus unum at the top. In circulated condition, these details may appear softened or worn, but they're still identifiable, and that's important. Now here's where collectors start paying serious attention. The 1957 D penny is known for certain varieties, especially doubling errors. One of the most famous is the 1957 double die obverse, but that variety is typically associated with the Philadelphia Mint. However, even Denver coins can show minor doubling, repunched mint marks, or unusual striking characteristics. These subtle differences can turn an ordinary coin into something collectors actively hunt for. When it comes to rarity and demand, condition is everything. A heavily circulated 1957 D penny might only be worth a few cents to a casual buyer. But if that same coin shows sharp details, minimal wear, or unique errors, its value can rise significantly. Collectors use grading systems to evaluate coins, ranging from poor condition all the way up to mint state. Even within circulated grades like fine or very fine, small differences in preservation can affect the price. And here's the part that surprises most people. While many 1957 D pennies in circulated condition are common, certain examples, especially those with strong details, attractive color, or error varieties, can sell for much higher amounts. In today's auction market, average circulated pieces might range from a few cents to a couple of dollars. But higher-end circulated coins, sometimes called choice circulated, can bring in $175,000 or even more. Now let's talk about the exciting side, the possibility of big money. While it's rare, some exceptional examples or era coins have reached into the $4 million, particularly if they show unusual characteristics or are graded at the top of their category. Coins that retain a rich reddish color, even after years of circulation, are especially desirable. And if a coin is discovered with a clear and dramatic error, collectors are willing to pay a premium. This is exactly why people are going back through their old coin jars, checking every penny carefully. Because the difference between a 1-cent coin and a $100 coin can come down to a tiny detail most people would never notice. If you're serious about collecting or even just curious about what you might have, there are a few things you need to keep in mind. First, never clean your coins. It might seem like a good idea to make them look shiny, but cleaning can actually destroy their value. Collectors prefer coins in their natural state, even if they look worn. Use a magnifying glass or a coin loupe to check for details like doubling, unusual marks, or sharpness in the design. The more you train your eye, the better your chances of spotting something valuable. Coins should be kept in a dry, safe environment, preferably in protective holders. This prevents further damage and helps maintain their condition over time. The coin market changes, and values can rise as demand increases. What seems like a small find today could become more valuable in the future as collectors continue to search for high-quality examples of older coins. So what's the real takeaway here? The 1957 Lincoln Wheat Penny may look ordinary, but it represents a piece of American history, a design that lasted half a century, and a collecting opportunity that still excites people today. Most of these coins are modest in value, especially in circulated condition, but hidden among them are pieces that can surprise you. Next up, we're diving deep into one of those overlooked treasures, the 1958 Lincoln Wheat Penny. A coin that looks ordinary at first glance, but in the right condition with the right details, can turn into something collectors chase with real passion and real dollars. It's 1958 in the United States. The country is in a period of growth, optimism, and transformation. Cars are bigger, culture is changing, and coins, yes, even pennies, are part of everyday life. The Lincoln Wheat Penny, first introduced in 1909 to honor Abraham Lincoln, had already become one of the most recognizable coins in American history. Designed by Victor David Brenner, this coin wasn't just currency, it was a tribute. And by 1958, it was reaching the end of an era. That's right. The 1958 Wheat Penny was the final year this iconic design was produced before being replaced in 1959 by the Lincoln Memorial Reverse. That alone gives this coin a special place in history. It represents the closing chapter of nearly 50 years of coin design. And when you narrow it down even further to the 1958 coin with the D Mint mark, meaning it was struck at the Denver Mint, you're looking at a piece that carries both historical significance and collector appeal. Now let's bring the focus closer. Imagine holding this coin in your hand. It's small, just 1 cent in face value, but rich in detail. On the front, you see the familiar profile of Abraham Lincoln, facing right. The word Liberty sits to the left, and the date 1958 is stamped clearly on the right side, with that tiny but important D Mint mark just below it. Above Lincoln's head, the motto "I in God We Trust" curves along the top edge. It's simple, clean, and deeply symbolic. Flip the coin over, and you're greeted by the classic wheat reverse design, 2 wheat stalks curving along the left and right edges, framing the words 1 cent boldly in the center, with United States of America just below. At the top, the Latin phrase "E pluribus unum" reminds us of unity. This design, often called the wheat penny, is what collectors fell in love with for decades. But here's where things get interesting. Not all 1958 pennies are valuable. In fact, millions were made. Over 800 million, to be precise. So what separates an ordinary penny from one worth serious money? The answer lies in condition, rarity within condition grades, and collector demand. When we talk about a coin being in fine condition, we're referring to a level of preservation where the coin has seen circulation but still retains clear details. The major features are visible. Lincoln's hair may show some wear, the wheat stalks might not be razor sharp, but the overall design is still strong and readable. For most coins, this would mean modest value. But because 1958 marks the final year of the Wheat Penny series, even circulated examples attract attention. Collectors love last year coins. There's something psychologically powerful about owning the final issue of a long-running design. It feels like owning the last page of a book, the closing note of a song. And that emotional value translates into real demand. Now, let's talk numbers, the part everyone is waiting for. In typical fine condition, a 1958 Wheat Penny might only be worth a small premium over face value, perhaps a few cents to a couple of dollars depending on eye appeal. But here's where things take a dramatic turn. When you move up into higher grades, extremely fine, uncirculated, or even mint state, the value starts climbing fast. And then there are the rare exceptions. Coins with exceptional strike quality, bright original luster, or minimal imperfections can command $548,000 in today's auction market. But the real legends, the coins that make headlines, are those rare error varieties or near-perfect specimens graded at the highest levels by professional grading services. Some top condition 1958 D pennies, especially those graded MS65 and above, have sold for hundreds of dollars. Push that grade even higher, and you're stepping into the territory where collectors compete fiercely, driving prices into the thousands. These are not coins you find every day. They're carefully preserved, often stored for decades, and brought to market only when collectors decide to part with them. In today's online auction world, where collectors from around the globe compete in real time, even a single exceptional coin can ignite bidding wars. The right coin, at the right time, in front of the right audience, can far exceed expected values. That's why understanding your coin and its true condition is so important. So what should you look for if you think you might have one of these coins? First, check the date and mint mark carefully. Make sure it's 1958, and that small d is present. Next, examine the condition. Look at Lincoln's hair, the clarity of the wheat stalks, and the overall surface of the coin. Are there scratches? Discoloration? Or does it still have that original shine? Lighting matters. Angle the coin under a light source and see how it reflects. Coins with original luster often have a subtle glow that moves across the surface. That's a good sign. Also, avoid cleaning your coin. This is one of the biggest mistakes new collectors make. Cleaning can actually reduce the value significantly because it removes the original surface that collectors prize. If you believe your coin might be in exceptional condition, consider having it evaluated by a professional grading service. These organizations assign a grade based on strict standards, and that grade can make a huge difference in value. A coin that looks nice to the untrained eye might actually be worth much more or much less once properly assessed. Another tip: don't rely solely on what you see online. Prices can vary widely, and not every listing reflects a real sale. Look for completed auction results to understand what collectors are actually paying. Knowledge is your biggest advantage in this space. Somewhere out there, in a drawer, a jar, or even in circulation, one of these coins is waiting to be rediscovered. And for someone paying attention, someone who knows what to look for, that small discovery could turn into something truly valuable. Next up, we're diving deep into one of those overlooked treasures, the 1956 Lincoln Wheat Penny with a D mint mark. A coin that millions have handled but very few have truly understood. It's the mid-1950s in the United States. The country is booming after World War II. Cars are bigger, families are growing, and industry is thriving. And quietly, in the city of Denver, the U.S. Mint is producing millions of pennies that will pass through the hands of everyday Americans. Among them is the 1956 Lincoln Wheat Penny, a coin that seems ordinary at first glance, yet holds a deeper story. The Lincoln Wheat Penny series itself began back in 1909, introduced to honor the 100th birthday of Abraham Lincoln. It was the first U.S. coin to feature a real historical figure instead of symbolic imagery. Designed by Victor David Brenner, this penny carried Lincoln's portrait on the front and 2 wheat stalks on the back, symbolizing prosperity and growth. By 1956, this design had already been in circulation for nearly 5 decades, making it one of the most recognized coins in American history. Now let's zoom in on the 1956 D version. The D mint mark tells us this coin was struck at the Denver Mint. Over 1.4 billion of these pennies were produced that year, which might make you think, how could something so common be valuable? And that's exactly where most people get it wrong. Because in the world of coin collecting, it's never just about how many were made, it's about how many survived in collectible condition. The obverse, that's the front, features the calm, dignified profile of Lincoln, with the inscriptions "I in God we trust" above Liberty to the left, and the date 1956 along with the small D mint mark on the right. But what separates an ordinary coin from a collectible one lies in the details. The sharpness of Lincoln's hair, the clarity of his coat, the smoothness of the fields, these are the subtle features collectors obsess over. Flip the coin over, and you'll see the iconic wheat ears framing the words 1 cent and United States of America with E pluribus unum above. In a well-preserved coin, those wheat lines are crisp and defined. In a circulated one, they're often worn down, fading into the background. Now let's talk about condition, because this is where things get interesting. A 1956 D Lincoln Wheat Penny in fine condition, which means it has visible wear but still retains clear details, is generally considered common. But here's the twist: even within fine condition, there are variations. Some coins were struck better than others. Some have stronger details, fewer marks, and more eye appeal. And those subtle differences can push a coin's value higher than expected. Collectors are always hunting for coins that stand out. Maybe it has an unusually sharp strike. Maybe it has a rich, original color, that deep chocolate brown or even a hint of red. Or maybe, just maybe, it carries a rare minting error like a doubled die or an off-center strike. Those are the coins that turn heads at auctions. In typical fine condition, a 1950-60 Lincoln Wheat Penny might only be worth a few cents to a couple of dollars. Not exactly life-changing money. But here's where the story takes a turn. If that same coin is in higher condition, say extremely fine or uncirculated, the value starts climbing. And if it's a top-grade example with exceptional quality or a rare error, suddenly, you're not talking about cents anymore. At auctions, high-grade 1950-60 pennies with strong strikes and original red color have sold for $165,000. Yes, millions for a 1-cent coin. And error varieties? Those can push the value even higher, depending on rarity and demand. But here's the reality most people don't realize. These valuable coins don't just appear out of nowhere. They're found by people who know what to look for. People who take the time to examine their coins instead of spending them without a second thought. So if you're serious about collecting, or even just curious, here are a few things to keep in mind. Always check the mint mark. That tiny D can make a big difference. Look closely at the condition, don't just glance at it. Use good lighting. Maybe even a magnifying glass. Pay attention to details like wear, scratches, and color. And most importantly, don't clean your coins. Cleaning might make them look better to you, but to collectors, it destroys value instantly. It's also smart to compare your coin with verified examples or get it evaluated by a professional grading service. Because sometimes, what looks like an ordinary coin could be something much more. Next up, we're diving deep into one of those pieces, the 1946 Lincoln Wheat Penny with no mint mark, especially in very fine condition, and why this seemingly ordinary coin continues to spark interest in today's auction market. To understand the true story behind this coin, we have to travel back to a very significant time in American history. The year 1946 marked the end of World War II, a moment when the United States was transitioning from wartime production back to normal life. Coinage during the early 1940s had been affected by the war, with changes like the famous 1943 steel cents introduced to conserve copper. But by 1946, the U.S. Mint had returned to producing bronze pennies, restoring the familiar look and feel that people recognized. These coins featured the iconic portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, a design first introduced in 1909 to commemorate his 100th birthday. The reverse of the coin carries the classic wheat ears design, giving it the name Wheat Penny. Two elegant stalks of wheat frame the words 1 cent and United States of America, symbolizing prosperity and agricultural strength. This design remained in use until 1958, making the 1946 penny part of a beloved and widely collected series. Now, when we talk about a 1946 penny without a mint mark, we are referring to a coin struck at the Philadelphia Mint. At that time, coins produced in Philadelphia did not carry a mint mark, unlike those from Denver or San Francisco. While millions of these coins were produced, what makes them interesting today isn't just their origin, it's their condition and the story they carry through time. Let's take a closer look at the unique features of this coin. The 1946 Lincoln Wheat Penny is composed primarily of copper, with a small percentage of tin and zinc. It weighs approximately 3.11 grams and has a diameter of 19 millimeters. On the front, you'll see Lincoln's profile facing right, along with the inscriptions "I in God We Trust" above, "Liberty" to the left, and the year 1946 to the right. In very fine condition, many of these details remain sharp. Lincoln's hair shows clear separation of strands, and the cheek and jawline retain noticeable definition. On the reverse side, the wheat ears still display strong lines, though some wear is visible at the high points. The lettering remains bold, and the overall design is still quite appealing. This level of preservation is what places the coin in the very fine category, well circulated, but far from worn out. Now comes the big question: how rare is this coin, really? The truth is, the 1946 Philadelphia penny is not rare in the absolute sense. Over 1 billion were minted. However, rarity in coin collecting isn't just about mintage numbers, it's about survival and higher grades. Most of these coins circulated heavily for decades, meaning examples in very fine or better condition are becoming increasingly harder to find, especially those with attractive surfaces, minimal corrosion, and original color. Collector demand plays a huge role here. Lincoln Wheat Pennies are one of the most popular coin series in the world, and collectors often seek to complete full sets by date and mint mark. Even a common date like 1946 becomes desirable when it's in a well-preserved condition. Add in factors like original reddish-brown luster or a clean, damage-free surface, and suddenly the value starts to climb. Let's talk about the market value, because this is where things get interesting. In general, a 1946 no-mint mark penny in very fine condition might sell for a modest amount, often between a few cents to a few dollars. But here's where reality meets hype. Claims of these coins being worth $350,000 usually depend on exceptional circumstances. For a 1946 penny to reach values in the $586,000, it would need to be in uncirculated condition, graded extremely high by professional grading services, or possess a rare mint error such as double dies, off-center strikes, or unusual planchet issues. In very fine condition alone, reaching thousands of dollars is highly unlikely in standard market conditions. However, that doesn't mean the coin isn't valuable in a broader sense. Its historical significance, its role in a complete collection, and its potential for appreciation over time still make it worth holding on to, especially if it's one of the better preserved examples. For collectors, the key is knowledge and patience. Always examine your coins carefully. Look for details like sharpness, color, and any unusual features. Avoid cleaning your coins, as this can significantly reduce their value. Store them properly in protective holders to prevent further wear or environmental damage. If you believe you have an exceptional example, consider having it graded by a professional service, as this can authenticate the coin and potentially increase its market appeal. It's also important to stay updated with auction trends. Coin values fluctuate based on demand, collector interest, and overall market conditions. What might seem like a low-value coin today could gain attention in the future, especially as more collectors enter the hobby and seek out classic pieces like the Lincoln Wheat Penny. Next up, I'm talking about the 1944 Lincoln Wheat Penny with no mint mark, a small copper coin that could be worth far more than you ever imagined even in circulated condition. It's 1944. The world is still in the grip of World War II. Resources are scarce, economies are strained, and even something as simple as a penny is affected by global conflict. Just 1 year earlier, in 1943, the United States Mint made a drastic change. Pennies were struck in steel instead of copper to conserve metal for the war effort. But by 1944, copper returned, and that's where our story begins. The 1944 Lincoln Wheat Penny without a mint mark was struck in Philadelphia, which at the time did not place a mint mark on coins. These pennies were made primarily from recycled brass shell casings from the war. Yes, you heard that right, the very ammunition used on battlefields was melted down and reborn as everyday currency. So when you hold one of these coins, you're not just holding money, you're holding a piece of wartime history. The design itself remains one of the most iconic in American coinage. On the obverse, you'll find the familiar profile of Abraham Lincoln, a symbol of unity and strength, designed by Victor David Brenner. Above his head is the word liberty, and to the right, the date 1944. Because this coin has no mint mark, it tells you it came from Philadelphia. Flip it over, and you'll see the classic wheat ears framing the words 1 cent and United States of America. This reverse design, often called the wheat penny, was used from 1909 to 1958 and remains a favorite among collectors. But what makes the 1944 no-mint mark penny truly interesting isn't just its design or history, it's the subtle details and variations that can turn an ordinary coin into something extraordinary. Most of these pennies were struck in large numbers, and millions still exist today. In circulated condition, they often show where the high points of Lincoln's hair are flattened, the wheat stalks on the reverse may be less defined, and the overall surface may have scratches or discoloration from years of use. However, even in circulated condition, collectors still seek these coins. Why? Because condition, color, and small errors can dramatically influence value. A circulated 1944 penny might look worn, but if it still retains some of its original reddish tone, known as red-brown, or even full red, its desirability increases. Coins that have avoided heavy corrosion or damage are always more attractive in the collector market. Now let's talk about rarity, because this is where things get really exciting. While the standard 1944 Philadelphia penny is common, there are rare variations that can skyrocket in value. The most famous is the 1944 steel penny error. Remember, 1943 pennies were made of steel. But a few steel blanks accidentally made their way into the 1944 production line. If you ever find a 1944 penny that sticks to a magnet, you might be holding one of the rarest coins in U.S. history, worth tens, $100,000 depending on condition. Even without that extreme rarity, certain high-grade or well-preserved circulated coins can still command impressive prices. A typical circulated 1944 no-mint mark penny might be worth anywhere from a few cents to a few dollars. But if the coin is in better circulated condition, say, extremely fine, it could reach $20,000, $100,000 or more. And if you step into uncirculated territory, especially with strong luster and minimal marks, values can climb into the million. Now here's the part that gets people excited. Some collectors and auction results have shown that exceptional examples, particularly those with strong color and minimal wear, can push into the millions of dollars. These are not your average pocket change coins, they are carefully preserved pieces that stand out in quality. And when demand meets rarity, prices can rise quickly, especially in competitive auctions. Collector demand for the 1944 Lincoln Wheat Penny remains strong for several reasons. First, it's tied directly to World War II history, which adds emotional and historical value. Second, it's part of the widely collected Wheat Penny series, making it essential for completing collections. And third, the possibility of rare errors keeps treasure hunters constantly searching. This combination creates a steady demand, even for circulated coins. If you're a collector or even just someone curious about the coins you own, there are a few important tips to keep in mind. Always check the date carefully. Look for the absence of a mint mark under the date, confirming it's from Philadelphia. Use a magnet to test for the rare steel version. This simple step could change everything. Pay attention to the coin's color and surface. Avoid cleaning your coins, because cleaning can significantly reduce value. And if you believe you've found something special, consider having it graded by a professional service to authenticate and evaluate its condition. Another key tip is patience. Coin collecting is not just about quick profit, it's about understanding history, recognizing details, and waiting for the right opportunity. Sometimes a coin that seems ordinary today can become more valuable over time as demand grows and fewer high-quality examples remain available. Think about how incredible it is that such a small object can carry so much weight. The 1944 Lincoln Wheat Penny without a mint mark is more than just a coin. It's a survivor of a world at war, a product of resourcefulness, and a hidden opportunity for those who know what to look for. Next up, we are diving deep into the fascinating 1945 United States Lincoln Wheat Penny with no mint mark, especially in extra fine condition, a coin that proves even the smallest piece of history can carry surprising value. To truly understand why this coin matters, we have to step back in time to 1945. This was not just any year. It marked the final chapter of World War II, a period that shaped economies, industries, and even the coins in people's pockets. The United States Mint was producing massive quantities of coinage to support a nation at war and transitioning into peace. The Lincoln Wheat Penny, first introduced in 1909 to honor President Abraham Lincoln, was already a staple of American currency by this time. Designed by Victor David Brenner, the coin featured Lincoln's iconic profile on the obverse and two wheat stalks on the reverse, symbolizing prosperity and unity. The 1945 penny without a mint mark was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, which traditionally did not use a mint mark during that era. While millions of these coins were produced, making them common in lower grades, the real story begins when we focus on condition. Because most of these pennies circulated heavily during the 1940s, finding one in extra fine condition today is a completely different story. It's not just about age, it's about survival. Now let's talk about what makes this coin unique when you hold it in your hand. The obverse features a sharp and detailed portrait of Abraham Lincoln. In extra fine condition, you can clearly see the hair strands above his ear, the crisp outline of his jaw, and strong lettering in "I in God We Trust, Liberty," and the date 1945. The absence of a mint mark beneath the date confirms it was minted in Philadelphia. On the reverse, the wheat stalks remain well defined, with visible grain lines that haven't been worn away by decades of circulation. The words 1 cent and United States of America stand bold, and the motto E pluribus unum arches cleanly across the top. The coin's original reddish-brown copper tone may have softened over time, but in extra fine condition, it still carries an attractive, even color that collectors appreciate. But here's where things get interesting. You might be thinking, if millions were made, how can this coin be valuable? That's the mistake most people make. Rarity is not just about how many coins were minted, it's about how many still exist in high-grade condition. And for a coin like the 1945 wheat penny, surviving in extra fine condition without significant wear, scratches, or corrosion is far less common than you might expect. Many were lost, damaged, or worn down over decades of everyday use. Collector demand plays a huge role here. Numismatists, serious coin collectors, are constantly searching for high-quality examples of classic coins, especially those tied to significant historical periods like World War II. The 1945 penny represents the end of an era, both historically and within the wheat penny series itself, which would soon transition to the Lincoln Memorial design in 1959. That historical connection, combined with strong visual detail and preservation, drives demand upward. Now let's talk about what everyone really wants to know: the value. In circulated condition, a 1945 no-mint mark penny might only be worth a small premium over face value. But in extra fine condition, depending on the coin's eye appeal, surface quality, and color, these pennies can range from several dollars to significantly higher amounts in the collector's market. And when you step into even higher grades approaching uncirculated or red-toned examples, the value can climb dramatically, sometimes reaching into the $267,000 or even crossing into the $572,000 range at auction for exceptional specimens. The key is quality. The sharper the details, the cleaner the surfaces, and the more original the color, the more collectors are willing to pay. For anyone watching this who might have old coins sitting around, this is where you need to pay attention. Because spotting a valuable coin isn't just luck, it's knowledge. Start by checking the date carefully. Make sure it reads 1945 and then look just below the date for a mint mark. If there's no letter, you've got a Philadelphia issue. Next, examine the condition. Look at Lincoln's hair, the wheat stalks, and the lettering. Are the details still sharp, or are they worn flat? Avoid cleaning the coin at all costs. Cleaning might seem like a good idea, but it actually destroys value in the eyes of collectors. It's also worth considering professional grading if you believe your coin is in particularly strong condition. Third-party grading services authenticate and assign a grade to the coin, which can significantly increase buyer confidence and market value. And remember, even small differences in grade can mean big differences in price. The 1945 Lincoln Wheat Penny without a mint mark stands as a perfect example of how history, condition, and collector demand come together to create value. It's a coin that millions once used without a second thought, yet today it holds a special place in the world of numismatics. It reminds us that value isn't always obvious at first glance. Sometimes it's hidden in the details, waiting for someone with a sharp eye and a bit of curiosity to discover it. Next up, we're diving deep into one of those overlooked treasures, the 1955 Lincoln Wheat Penny with a D mint mark, a coin that might not look flashy at first glance, but under the right conditions, can turn into a collector's dream worth far more than 1 cent. To truly understand why this coin matters, you have to go back to its roots. The Lincoln Wheat Penny series began in 1909, created to honor Abraham Lincoln, making it the first U.S. coin to feature a real historical figure. Produced by the United States Mint, these coins became a staple of everyday commerce for decades. By 1955, America was in a post-war economic boom. Industries were thriving, families were growing, and coins like the wheat penny were being minted in massive numbers to keep up with demand. The D mint mark on this coin tells us it was struck in Denver, one of the key mints responsible for producing coinage for the western United States. But here's where things start to get interesting. While 1955 is famous among collectors for the rare double die error from Philadelphia, the 1955 D Lincoln Wheat Penny has its own unique appeal, especially in very fine condition. These coins were heavily circulated, meaning most examples you'll find today are worn down, scratched, or damaged. Finding one that has survived decades of use while still retaining clear detail is what elevates it from common to collectible. Now let's talk about the features that make this coin stand out. On the obverse, you'll see the iconic portrait of Lincoln, facing right, with the inscriptions "I in God we trust" above, "Liberty" to the left, and the date 1955 to the right, along with the small but crucial D mint mark beneath the date. In very fine condition, you can still clearly see Lincoln's hair details, especially around the ear and above the forehead, although some flattening is expected. The cheek and jawline remain defined, and the overall portrait still carries a strong presence. Flip the coin over, and you'll find the classic wheat reverse design, 2 wheat stalks framing the words 1 cent and United States of America with E pluribus unum arching above. In very fine condition, the wheat lines are partially worn but still visible, and the lettering remains bold and readable. The balance between wear and preserved detail is exactly what collectors look for at this grade. What really drives demand, though, is the combination of age, condition, and survival rate. Millions of 1955 D pennies were minted, but very few have made it through the decades in respectable condition. Coins were tools of commerce, not collectibles, so they were used, abused, and often discarded. That's why a very fine example today stands out. It represents a piece of history that managed to endure. Collector demand for this coin is steady, especially among those building Lincoln cent collections. While it may not be the rarest coin in the series, it holds strong appeal due to its historical context and the challenge of finding well-preserved examples. And when you factor in the overall popularity of wheat pennies, it becomes clear why this coin continues to attract attention in auctions and private sales. Now let's address the question everyone is really asking: what is it worth? In very fine condition, a standard 1955 D Lincoln Wheat Penny typically ranges from a few dollars up to around $570,000 depending on eye appeal. But here's the twist that many people overlook. Exceptional examples with original luster, minimal marks, and strong detail can push higher, sometimes reaching into the $743,000. And if the coin is misidentified and actually contains a rare error or unusual characteristic, the value can skyrocket dramatically into the millions. That's why knowledge is everything in this market, because the difference between a common coin and a valuable one often comes down to the smallest details. For collectors, the key is patience and attention. Always examine your coins carefully under good lighting. Look for sharp details, clean surfaces, and any unusual features like doubling, off-center strikes, or minting errors. Storage is equally important. Keeping coins in protective holders can preserve their condition and prevent damage over time. And perhaps most importantly, never assume a coin is worthless just because it looks ordinary. Some of the most valuable finds in numismatics have come from everyday pocket change. As we come to the end of this journey, one thing should be clear. The 1955 D Lincoln Wheat Penny in very fine condition is more than just a coin. It's a survivor, a storyteller, and a reminder that value isn't always obvious at first glance. It represents a time when coins were part of daily life, quietly passing through countless hands before ending up in collections where they are finally appreciated. So the next time you come across an old penny, don't ignore it. Take a closer look. Because hidden within those small copper circles could be a piece of history and maybe, just maybe, a hidden treasure waiting to be discovered. If you've enjoyed this deep dive and learned something new, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and drop a comment below telling us about the rare coins you've found in your collection. Thanks for watching, and may your next coin be a valuable one.